Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. So, this is the very first day of Islam 101 officially in terms of lectures and presentation, and we have a lot of things to cover. The first thing we're going to cover is purity, right? I've mentioned this last week when we were here. Before we go into this, I have to mention a few things so we understand where we're getting all this information from. As you guys can notice on the first slide, this is the reference is from Al-Fiqh Muyassir, right? That's the book, which literally which translates to the easy fiqh, the easy way to know fiqh, basically. And the author is Maulana Shafiqur Rahman Nadwi. This is the book I will be using as my source all throughout the lecture, all throughout the presentation, all the classes. So if you, all my questions are basically referred back to this specific book. And if you guys have more questions or anything else that needs entertaining, we can go to the ulama and figure that out, inshallah. So, before we go into purity and start talking about purity, well, what is purity and is it important? Before we discuss anything in this class, we have to see the importance behind it. If you cannot see the importance behind something in deen, in Islam, then you might not be doing it for the right reason, right? Once we understand the urgency and the importance behind it, then we have more of a yearning towards it. So, purity, or in Arabic, it means tahara. In the Quran, there's a part in ayah 222 in Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that surely Allah loves those who are most repenting and loves those who keep themselves pure. Now look at this. This is a huge comparison here. In order for us to go to Jannah, in order for us to be successful Muslims, we have to continuously repent, right? Because we all sin, right? Sinning is something that happens all throughout our lives, and no one is perfect. So Allah is saying that He loves the one who is most repenting, which makes the most sense. This is something that should happen all the time. And in that same ayah, He says He loves those who keep themselves pure. So imagine how important it is for us to repent, right? We repent, why? To avoid Jahannam. We repent to go to Jannah, right? That's how important it is. Allah is saying, well, as important it is for you to repent, that's how important it is for you to keep yourself pure. Now we have an understanding of, oh, this is pretty important now. You know, but why is this so important? Well, in anything in deen, when you learn about it, you'll see something that goes back to Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I mentioned the Quranic ayah, and the Sunnah, the hadith that goes into it is right here in Jami' al-Tirmidhi. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the key to paradise is salah, and the key to salah is purification. So there's two steps to it. So in order for us to go to Jannah, we have to pray. In order for us to pray, the key to it, we have to be purified. I mentioned this last week when we were here, and I said that as we were growing up, our parents and our family members showed us the importance of salah, pray, pray, pray. And I said that none of that is important if you don't know your prerequisites for prayer, which is purification. If you're not pure, then your prayer isn't really counting for much. So that's why we have to see that, okay, I have to be pure because as a Muslim, I need to go to Jannah. I want to go to Jannah. As a Muslim, for me to go to Jannah, I have to pray properly. If I want to pray properly, I have to be properly taken care of all throughout, right? Now, what does it mean? Okay, let's go into it. Let's jump into it. What does it mean to be impure, right? And in Arabic, it refers to as najasa. Like, what does it mean to be impure? In Islamic ruling, in Islamic understanding, when you say you are impure, it does not mean you have dirt on your body. That's not what it means. What it refers to is that it refers to three things actually, and keep this in mind. So for example, I don't like to make my quizzes hard. When I give quizzes, they should be very easy and straightforward. So this is something that would come on the quiz where I would ask you like, hey, what does it mean to be impure? And you would mention three things to say it means to be impure in Islamic sense that your condition of the body or the clothing or the place is dirty by the Islamic laws. What does that mean? We'll go into that, inshallah. So, three things. So, when it comes to impurity, we have to consider three things at all times. What is on our body, what is on our clothing, and what is in the region, the area that we're in, right? When those three things are pure, then we're in a good state, right? And as a Muslim, we should always look for these things. For example, if you go to a club or a bar, there's impurity all over the place. There's alcohol all over the place. So you might have clean clothes, you might have a clean body, but your entire area is dirty, Islamically, right? As Muslims, we should try to keep all three conditions pure at all times. All times. Because what ends up happening is that As soon as we step away from purity, generally, as a Muslim steps away from purity, he or she becomes impure. They end up going somewhere down the road of sinning. We're more likely to sin when we are impure than we are pure, right? When we are pure, when we make wudu to go pray, right? You don't go make wudu to go hit the club. You don't go make wudu to do something bad. No one does. When you make wudu, you feel like, okay, I have a purpose right now for what this wudu is for. Like, let's think about Bilal radiallahu anhu, right? This Sahabi, he would always keep himself in the state of wudu. Can you imagine if we always kept ourselves continuously in a state of wudu? If we kept doing that, then we would never think about doing something bad afterwards, because we would say, I just made wudu, right? Oh, I lost wudu. I'm going to go make wudu again. That's how he was. And he would pray to rakat salah afterwards. So if you were in that condition, he was mentally training himself to a position where he cannot go into a region where there is bad or evil, or he cannot do something bad or evil or dirty in Islamic sense, because he kept on keeping himself pure. And this was actually for the reason why Rasulullah ﷺ heard his footsteps in Jannah. But that's a different story. So keep these three things in mind: the body, the clothing, and place. Now, okay, I have those three things. And I said earlier that dirt does not count it as one of those dirty things. So if I have dirt on my hand and I have dirt on my shirt and I'm stepping on dirt, I'm pure all over. Yeah.
What about sweat?
Sweat is fine too. Yeah, sweat is all good. So because sweat is something that's natural in your body. Now we're gonna cover things that are natural in your body, but that is impure, and we'll distinguish the difference. For example, we have blood, we have semen, we have sweat. We have to cover all these kinds of liquids that we excrete from our body and understand, okay, what is pure, what is impure, okay? And then we're gonna try to figure that out, inshallah, slowly. So moving forward, there's gonna be a bunch of categories so a few of us were in the football league, so they know what I'm talking about. So as we go down this entire list and all the classes, keep in mind it will be very informational. If you would like to take notes, I feel like it would benefit you, or it wouldn't benefit me much. It would benefit you more than it would benefit me. And you can refer to those notes. The slides will be up anyway for you to review online. That's not a problem. But we always remember something better when we write it down ourselves. So if you write it down, if you note it, that you know what, he said that three things are meant when it means Islamically impure, and those three things are the body, the place, and the clothing, you'll better remember it next time. So keep that in mind as we move forward. When it comes to impurity, there's two types of impurity. There's ritual impurity and then there's physical impurity. Now, when I did this with the football league, we went over like 3, 4, 5 times. We'll go over it 10 times if we need to, that's fine. Because what ended up happening was that people were confusing the two, right? I mean, you don't want to be impure in any sense, but it's still important to understand what kind of impurity you're in at the moment as a Muslim, so you know how to take care of yourself at that moment. So if you look at it real briefly, ritual impurity, the only way to purify yourself from that is if you were to do wudu, which is ablution, or a bath, Islamic ghusl, which I mentioned last lecture, and I'll cover it again when we get to it, and tayammum. Meaning one of those three things have to be done based on the condition, then you're good. Alright? The other one is physical impurity. You can clear yourself of this just by putting water on the area and you're good. So we have two things, right? We have one scenario where you need to have wudu, or you need to take a ghusl, or you need to do something specific because this is a ritual. Because this is limiting you from doing something ritual like praying salah. And then you have the other one where, let's say there's something impure on your hand or your arm right here. You take some water and you get rid of it. And that's it, that's all you have to do. So wouldn't it be good, smart of us to know the difference? So instead of taking a ghusl, I know that all I have to do is take some water and just do this and I'm good to go. So that's important for us to know. It makes our life easier as well. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to seek out ilm and seek out knowledge, try to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do? How can I make my life easier? People keep saying deen is easy, deen is easy. Well, I don't understand. Well, we don't understand why deen is easy at times because we never inquired, we never asked, we never sought these answers. So when we do, we see that, okay, it's making a lot more sense, it's becoming a lot easier on me. And that's the idea behind it. Now, by that, I don't mean that everything will just be, there are no rules in Islam. I don't mean that. Because sometimes you'll think that, okay, if deen is easy, then I should just do whatever I want to do and it's easy. No, Deen becomes easy when you start practicing it the right way. And when you start practicing it the right way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for you and I to keep istiqamah, to have that steadfastness towards what we're doing. And then Allah makes it easy on us. He makes the path easier for us. So keep in mind, there's two kinds of impurity, right? And we're going to go to the first one, which is ritual impurity. You guys can see everything, right? Okay. Ritual impurity, so I said it straight at the beginning, it's the state of a person with salah is invalid. Now this is important. The first hadith I mentioned was what? That the key to Jannah is salah, and the key to salah is purification. So obviously this is the purification that's keeping us away from salah, and that's what's going to keep us away from Jannah. So what is this sense of impurity? We have to understand that. It's known as hadath. I won't quiz you guys on Arabic terminology, that's not the point of this class. I just have it there in case someone actually is interested, they want to know more, or they want to actually know the terminology, they can actually note it down for your own benefit. So there's two types of it. And in both categories, there's two types. So we'll cover it. One is major, one is minor. So as you go through it, you'll see the two types. Remember I said one type is special. You have to do something specific for it, like ghusl or wudu. And one type you just put water and you're good. And they both have two categories, a major and a minor. So we're going to cover all that. And we're going to see what do we have to do for the major, what do we have to do for the minor. And then try to make some sense out of it. And how would we know that we have it in our head? Well, that's what the quiz is for. The quiz is not supposed, yes?
Are you going to share the slide that's on the website?
Yes, the slides will be on the website. So before the quizzes, you guys, so like I said earlier, if you take notes, it'll help you more. But you can always refer to the slides and then come to the class. But I'm telling you, just looking at the slides, you'll get confused. You'll see Arabic words, hadith akbar, and then you'll be like, wait, which one is major? But if you take notes, personally, I think it would help more. But the slides will be up for everyone to see, inshallah. So yeah, they'll have major and minor, and we'll see how we can tackle those major and minor impurities at a time. So let's go with the first one, major. So this is the ritual impurity, which talks about, right, salah. Oh, whoops. How do I go back? Oh. Sorry. Here we go. This is the major impurity, which talks about worship being invalid for us. So what is this? It's a state in which you must take a ghusl. You must take a ghusl, and if you were to pray in this state, then your prayer would not count. And there's more than one state, but for us only one state applies. So that one state is basically in the state after you basically have relations with your spouse, or you have a wet dream, right? And you have semen on your body, you have to get rid of that. So when that happens, you have to take a ghusl. And I mentioned this last week, what a ghusl is, right? Islamic ghusl is what? Making sure water is all over your body, right? Making sure you gargle and rinse out your mouth, and you rinse out your nose. And once you do those things, then you're pure, right? And this is important for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're married or single, because, well, at least for guys growing up, you end up having a wet dream at one point, and then you have to know how to purify yourself. And when you're married, when you have a relationship with your spouse, you have to know how to purify yourself. So we have to make sure we know these things. So in terms of when you're in the major state of impurity, you have to take a ghusl. That's the only way. You cannot just put water on it and you're good. You cannot just wipe away the semen. You have to take a ghusl. That's the only way it can work out. And then you have the minor one. And for that one, you just have to make wudu. That's it, honestly. Or tayammum, whatever. We'll cover the difference. We'll get more into details. So as we go past each slide, we'll get more and more details about what it is we have to do and what the specific type requires us to do. So we have major and minor. We know the major one requires ghusl and the minor one requires wudu for ritual impurity. And then we have physical impurity. So physical impurity is two types. So what does it say? It's impurity that a Muslim must avoid, and if it sticks to his body or clothing, then eliminating it is compulsory, meaning just don't get impure. In overall sense, like I said from the beginning, we want to be pure as much as possible, as much as we can, right? We should never look at it like, oh, I'm in a minor state of impurity, I'm okay. It should never, ever be like that, ever. It should be in a sense that, you know what, I need to make sure I'm clean all the time. I need to make sure I'm pure all the time. You know, and that will draw you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're cognizant of your purity, you will be drawn more to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To say that, you know what, you will feel it. You will feel a sense of cleanliness about you. And when you make wudu, when you take ghusl, you understand that you'll get into a zone of purity. When you make that niyyah, when you make that intention for it. So like I said, there's two types of physical impurity as well, severe or mild. You can say major or minor, same thing. The idea is that there's a separation, there's a difference. And it's najasatul ghaliza and najasatul khafifa. And ghaliza, with the severe one, it's the one that there's no discussion about it. There's no it's when it happens, you have to get rid of it, right? What do I mean by discussion? We'll get into that when we get to the next slide, inshallah. And then you have the mild one, which is it depends on the situation, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that as well. Do you have any questions so far?
Can you give us an example of both?
100%. They're coming up next. So, examples of I already covered the Hadith Akbar, right? What's Hadith Akbar? Hadith Akbar is the ritual impurity, which is the major type, which prevents you from prayer or worship. Which is basically when you have relations with your spouse or you have a wet dream, right? And then you have Hadith Asghar, and you have severe impurity big, and you have severe impurity small. So big and small in all cases. And we'll cover it, inshallah. So they actually overlap as well. You'll see some of the physical impurity will overlap into the ritual impurity, and we'll see. So what is a small impurity that you would need? Let's think about it. Let me not give you guys the answer. Let's think about it, okay? So I said something that prevents you from salah, right? For hadith akbar and asghar, the big one and the small one. The big one I said is easy. It's relations with your spouse or having a wet dream, right? And that prevents you from salah. The second one, you need to have wudu in order to pray. What causes you to force you to have wudu?
Going to the bathroom.
Easy. Yeah, that's one. Easy. Well, give me another one.
Party.
Yep, another one. We're missing one. We're missing one. Think about Jummah khutbah. Elders in the front row. Jummah khutbah. Sleeping. Right. I'm serious. This is very important. Sometimes we have to be very cognizant, because look, it's really like this is something that is an issue. Like I tell him, because if it's with my dad and he's sitting next to me, I tell him straight up, because that's my dad and I can do that. I'm like, Dad, you gotta go make wudu. He's like, oh no, I was okay. I'm like, well, just make wudu anyway. And it happens as we get older. We have this, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not that old. Somebody told me, I saw someone I know in my family.
Yeah.
He was sitting on the chair
Right.
and he was napping.
Right.
And I told him make a new wudu.
Right.
He said no.
Yeah.
I wasn't laying down.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting and napping, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so
I didn't buy it. Honestly.
So-
I want some clarification, please.
that's a good question. Yeah.
I think from what I learned is that there is napping, there's a clarification.
Yeah.
It has to be sound sleep and not nap.
So,
So for example, I'm sitting like this and I went like this. It's not sound sleep. I'm not sound asleep. For me to be sound asleep, I have to sit like him and go to sleep, or lay down and go to sleep.
I can make it very for me, I have a clear-cut way of going about it. Anything I try to do in terms of my personal conduct of deen and carrying out my deen, I try to have a clear-cut answer for it. You know what I mean? Now, that specific scenario he said, that person mentioned to you, right? He got you on a technicality, which is true. The rule goes so much to the sense of how you're sitting, like how he's mentioning, right? But the essence of it is that if you lose your sense of sound, you lost your wudu. So some people, what they do is they kind of like close their eyes, they kind of nod, but or like kind of nod off, and they can still sense everything happening around them, right? They have not, that person, he or she has not lost his or her wudu. Now, if I was that person, I would still go make wudu. Why? Because when you're in that state, you're really like between falling asleep and keeping yourself awake. Now, that's what I do for myself, right? That's what I do. I recommend that for myself. You're really like close to the line. Now, is it hard for me to make wudu? Not really. Am I in the masjid, let's say, for example? Why not? Am I at home? Why not? Why don't I just make wudu? And so it just makes life easier that way. But if they are in a sense where they still have sense of what's happening around them, and they're sitting in a way where they're like, still aware, then they have not lost their wudu. No, by definition, no. Um, but as I was saying, so for example, with my father or like someone in my family, if that happens, I tell them. And as we grow older, we have this slight sense of entitlement that we are usually correct about whatever it is that we do. So it's harder for us to go up to an elder and say, hey, what if you were asleep? They'll say, no, I know what I'm doing. So I don't mess with that. That's them. But we should know, because one day we'll become elders, right? And we don't want to be that. We don't want to give a sense of like, we don't want to give that vibe to people where they can't approach us about telling us that maybe we're doing something incorrect, or maybe Allah subhanahu will do, I wasn't aware of it. We don't want to become that. This is why we come to these classes. So we understand that, hey, I see this happening in my community, but I want to make sure it lessens to a point where it stops. And I don't want to be a part of that increases it, right? So for us, we have to be careful. Okay, am I falling asleep? How cautious am I around myself, right? So yes, sleeping, passing gas, going to the restroom, all of those things are minor ways of losing your wudu, which you have to renew your wudu for. But this is the second type. So on the screen right now, we're on severe impurity, which means the physical impurity. This is the different one, not the ritual. And there are many examples that go down, and if it goes under any of these examples, then without discussion, you have to get rid of it. It's impure. So I'll go through it really quickly. Not everything is applicable to us, but we'll cover it. Flowing blood, wine, flesh and skin of a dead animal, urine of an animal which cannot be eaten. Now they have, just stay away from all kinds of urine. That's just my recommendation to everybody. It just helps your life out. Waste of dog, waste and saliva of a carnivore, dropping of hen and duck, anything that exists from the body which causes wudu to break. See, remember how I said they overlap? I said physical will overlap with the ritual. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Carnivore, does dogs go into that category?
Yeah,
So if I pet a dog,
that's fine. Well,
That's
petting a
fine.
dog. Well, I don't want to say that's okay. So there's with dogs specifically, we have to get into the crux of understanding how that works. The saliva of a dog is impure for us, right? It wouldn't. So like I said, my clear answer: don't pet dogs. But since you asked, let's go into it. And if anyone knows anything else, please add on to it. For dogs, that saliva is impure. So for us to get into contact with that saliva, that's something we should not be doing. Now, you're saying pet the dog. What if the dog just licked itself and you pet that area, right? Now you have that saliva on your hands, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it didn't lick itself. Maybe you've been watching the dog for an hour and it hasn't done anything. You decide to pet it. Now, my recommendation, don't pet the dog. But since you asked, it depends on the saliva.
okay.
And that's a risk I personally wouldn't take myself.
So petting the dog, is it like the bigger one or the major one?
So the saliva would be counting under that. So it would be the major one. So a dog is a carnivore.
So I take like a shower or something.
No. That one would be ritual impurity. This is something you'd have to wash off. So I see what you're saying. Remember this one is remember how I said this? Look at the screen right now. You see how you have ritual and physical? So the dog is under the physical. So what does it say underneath it? It says that this is happening, it happens by using water to just wipe it off to get rid of it. You don't have to take a shower. But if it was ritual, then you have to take a shower. I know we have some like cultural things. Once I heard like if you like pet a dog, you gotta shower 7 times or something, or like do wudu 7 times. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I mean, go ahead, make wudu 7 times, but you don't have to. It's not that difficult. And so sometimes people might ask like, okay, why do you have so many different types of things like waste of dog and then waste of saliva and carnivore? Well, this is on a higher level for fuqaha, for the people who wrote Islamic jurisprudence, and they had specifics that they had to understand between different types of animals, and that was important for them. But for us, for practical usage, we would refer to what? We would refer to flowing blood. We would refer to anything that exists from the body that causes wudu to break, and I would hope that's all we refer to, because like I don't really expect us to have the wine or the dead animal or anything like that. But we'll move forward unless you guys have any other questions. Yeah.
So what about say in the case of the dog, like what if a dog comes and like licks your shirt or something?
Yeah. So that shirt needs to be cleaned.
Yeah, so do you have to like wash it, or can you just wash it off with water?
So that area it licks, that part has to be wiped off with water. So you don't have to wash the entire shirt. So, but let's say if the dog comes and let's say licks the bottom of my pants or something, I would just take my pants and then wash that part where it licked, and that would take care of that. Yeah.
What do you mean what wash? Can you?
Oh, okay. So, so by washing I mean like.
To run water through it? Or?
Yeah, you would have to take. So earlier it said, if you guys look here, earlier it says using tangible agents of purification like clean water. And what ends up happening is you don't like take water and like sprinkle it on the area. You have to make sure that you have the water like. Remember how I mentioned flowing water last time? It would be kind of like that, but it would be in your hand where you take it and you kind of like run it through. You get it? So it would be a clean, thorough wash of that area, rather than just drop some water and just dip. Like that's not how it is. You have to make sure it's cleaned properly. Good question. Here are more things to consider. So let's go through it real quickly in terms of what I would ask. So in terms of quizzes will never harm you. Quizzes will only help you. If you get questions right on quizzes, you get points for your mu'mineen points. If you don't get questions right, nothing happens. So don't worry about it. If you get questions right, then you benefited. You realize that you retained something. If you get questions wrong, you realize that you were incorrect, and you benefit and you retain something after that, inshallah. So keep that in mind. So I would ask you like, okay, what's the difference between the two types of physical impurity? And you would say, there's severe and mild, and one is you would give like an example of one of these or something like that. You'd say, okay, flowing blood is a severe impurity, and you'd maybe mention one of the rulings. So what is a ruling? Severe impurity, point 1, is excusable or pardonable if it's smaller than or equal to a dirham. Who knows how big a dirham is? Yeah, basically the size of a quarter, let's say. We can use that for example. So if there's a drop that takes up less than or equal to the size of a dirham, or like let's say a quarter for example, and that's on your body or on your clothing or in the region that you're at, because remember we have to consider those 3 things, right? Then you can excuse that. Now I don't know how that would happen ever, how you would have just such a small area of it, but that is under that ruling. So like if you go back, so that's a flowing blood, right? Someone else's blood, let's say. So if you have a droplet of blood that comes on you, that's very small, you would be fine. You wouldn't be severely impure. Or wine, like let's say I'm gonna be frank, right? People work at restaurants that deal with alcohol all the time, right? So if you have, let's say, wine somehow on your body and you have that droplet versus more than a droplet, you know if you're physically pure or not. That's important, because just because you're Muslim doesn't mean you don't work at a restaurant that has alcohol. This is true. It doesn't mean you should do it, but I'm just being frank with you guys because that's how it is. The next point is that, okay, so what does it say about it? If it's more than that, let's say quarter or dirham, then you have to wash it off with water or some other substance, but let's just go with water for now because that's easier for us. We live in America, it's 2017, we should have water anywhere and everywhere we look. Like there are stores that sell water all the time, it's like $1.50. Like I'm sure we'll have water somehow, inshallah. If not, then come to me and then I'll tell you that you can use ground or dirt, whatever it is. If you have more than that on the person's body, garment, or prayer, remember how I said they overlap? Salah is not permissible in that case as well, right? So if you have flowing blood all over you, you cannot pray in that condition. You have to get rid of it first, and then you can pray. And now let's say, now look at this. What if you have that drop on your body, and it's less than a quarter? If it's less than a quarter, can you still pray? Well, it says salah is permissible, but avoidable. Now, can you give me an example of when you would have, like, let's say there's like a little bit of blood on there. When would I pray versus when would I avoid it? Can you guys think of that? Yeah.
When like the time is done, for example.
Right. Like if the time for Asr is about to end, right? And right now you have a little bit of impurity on your body, where it's less than a dirham, less than a quarter, and you're like, okay, the time's about to finish. I know my salah is permissible, I'm not gonna avoid it. I'm gonna pray because the time's about to finish, right? But let's say it's Dhuhr Salah and you have a lot of time, right? You're like, you know what? I can go home, I can get rid of this, and then I'll pray. Because I'll still be within the time of prayer, and I'm avoiding it for now. So we can see the difference of when to pray versus when to avoid it. And then the mild impurity. So I don't know why there's a distinction between number 1 and number 2. I guess you can't eat horse, I don't know. But horse urine and like camel, cattle, goat, sheep, droppings of birds which cannot be eaten, those are all mild impurity. So if you haven't taken the course before, who can give me an example of when you would have one of this in your life, in real life? When would you have any of those examples? When would you be impure from one of those examples? In terms of horse urine, camel urine, cattle urine, goat urine, sheep urine? No one?
Sheep herder,
Sorry?
If you're in Bangladesh.
Okay, well, even in America this can happen. Hold on. No. Even in America this can happen. What?
and the farm.
Farm? For what?
If you're taking care of it.
For Eid. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Very practical, right?
That's right.
So it doesn't have to be in Bangladesh. It can be anywhere. If it's Eid time and you're going there to slaughter an animal, let's say, you have animals all over the place, and they're all edible: cattle, goat, sheep, and there's going to be urine, probably in a few areas that you might step into. So you have to know that. So this is very practical in the sense that, okay, what do you do if you come across this? If you come across, let's say, cattle urine, and you're going there for sacrificing a cattle, right? So what does it say here underneath? It says that mild impurity is excusable as long as it's not a large quantity. What is defined by a large quantity? The last time for severe impurity, they only allowed a quarter, like a dirham, right? That's it. Anything more than that, you have to get rid of it. This one is referring to a quarter of your body or clothing. That's completely different. Now you have way more leniency. There's a huge difference. It's saying that it's excusable so long as it's less than a fourth of your body or clothing, a fourth of your body or clothing. So what does that mean? So you would kind of generalize how much a fourth of your body is. So if I'm standing like this, so you would take the top right corner of your body as 1/4, right? 1/4 here on your right side, 1/4 top, 1/4 bottom, 1/4. And if it was more than that, basically you jumped in some urine or something, or like swam in it, then yeah, that's not excusable. You have to do something about that, right? So there's more leniency on this. So let's say you go to the farm and you're about to sacrifice an animal, and you step in some urine, and urine splatters up to your knee, right? The urine splatters up to your knee. Can you make salah? You can make salah. You can make salah in that condition, right? Otherwise, you'd have to wipe it off with water again, run it through with water again, and get rid of that. Do we have any questions about that? You guys clear on that? So like, let's say I'm in the farm and I'm just walking and I step on urine and it splatters all the way up to my knee. Like some big puddle or whatever. I'm still okay because it didn't go over the 1/4 of the body, right? So it's within it, so it's still excusable. Now, what should I do practically is get rid of that, run water through it either anyway, but am I still okay by Islamic rulings? Yes, you're still okay. It's still excusable. And then this is really technical, the note here. I'm just gonna come back to that later if needed, but I want to focus on the more important things right now, inshallah. So removing it. So he was talking about how should we get rid of it, right? What does it mean to remove the impurity? If it's impurity from relations with your spouse or impurity from a wet dream or anything of the sort, then you have to take a ghusl yourself, and you have to I would just say generally just wash your clothes regularly as you would, right? But if you check this here, if najasa touches the body, this is different. If najasa touches the body, if the impurity touches the body, water must be used to clean the najasa. Ghusl is not necessary. This is for all of these things, all this stuff, the blood, the wine, all of these things. If they come across your body, then all you have to do is take water and run it off, and you don't need to take ghusl, right? Only the area that's soiled, only the area that's soiled, which is najis, that has to be cleaned. That's all. Similarly, if there's impurity on our garments, impurity should be eradicated by washing the clothes thoroughly with soap. I would recommend. It's not, you don't have to, but I would recommend with soap personally. So do you guys understand that now? Any questions? If not, we can move forward, inshallah. So the big picture, and as we're concluding in a few minutes, inshallah, the big picture, purification, there's two types, right? Ritual and physical. What's the difference? Who can tell me what ritual is?
Ritual when you have to clean your body, like you cannot pray, your prayer is not accepted.
Right. Now, this is unfair for me to do this to you, but in physical, there's also a condition where you cannot pray too. But your definition is correct. That's the definition that's in here, so you would be correct. But I said that just to clarify. So ritual is, think about it. Salah, prayer, is something that you do. It's a ritual exercise, correct? Salah is something that's spiritual. It's ritual. Walking around is not ritual unless you're doing tawaf, right? So walking around would go under physical. So if you have some dirt, or not dirt, if you have some impurity on your foot or your leg, you would get rid of that, because that's physical impurity. It doesn't restrict you from salah though, right? That cattle urine does not restrict you from salah, but you would get rid of it. But if you have relations with your spouse, then you're restricted. Then you have to get rid of it with ghusl, right? Or if you pass gas, then you're restricted. You have to do wudu. You can't go around it. You can't go around it. And they both have major and minor, severe and mild. So if I were to ask you guys, what are the two types of purity, you would say ritual and physical, right? How many categories are there? Well, ritual has 2 categories and physical has 2 categories. They're both, you can just say major or minor, severe, mild, or whatever it is. The idea is for you to understand that there's a difference and it's separated. And then as you conclude, it is 6:40. I started about 2 minutes late, but just if anyone is interested in the Arabic, you will not be quizzed on this. I might ask it as an extra credit point or something. I've done that before, but Tahsin got it right when I said what is purity, but he cheated because he knew that from before, so he didn't get it from the class. But this would be the vocab. Tahara referring to purity, najasa referring to impurity, hadath, ritual impurity, an-najasatul haqiqiyya, physical impurity, hadath akbar, hadath asghar. If you want to ask me questions, I can tell you more about them. And that concludes our first day, the first class, the first lecture of Islam 101 officially. And what's next? We're going to cover